Hello, one and all. Welcome to the Bituation Room live. Thank you so much for being here, for pressing play, for sharing the stream, for liking the stream, for giving this podcast a million reviews, even though you just press play. And some of you are like, I've never listened to this podcast before. It's good, and it's going to be a real good one today. People. Jessica Valenti, reporter who is now gone independent, who has been on the abortion beat for decades now, is with us, and she is going to be breaking down how the right under Donald Trump is, fully criminalizing women's bodies and accusing women of homicide for simple things like terminating a pregnancy. So we're going to get into that a little bit later on. She's done some of the best, most cutting edge reporting, and everyone needs to follow her on Substack immediately after you listen to this show with her. So we're going to dig into it. Obviously, the Republicans are debating Medicaid right now, today. That has everything to do with having a safe pregnancy and birth, should one choose. So I'm excited to talk to her about that as well. Also, Jamie Loftus, comedian and author and podcast host of so many different amazing shows, is back with us. Really excited to have Jamie. And so we're going to dig into none other than Dan Bongino. It's Gino, actually. It's Dan Bongino is going to be deputy FBI head. Oh my God. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to have some hope because we're going to dig into Bernie Sanders. Once again, my man can't stop, won't stop. He is back on tour despite air travel being what it is. And specifically, he is taking it to swing districts, swing states, places with vulnerable Republicans in his Stop Oligarchy tour. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how Republicans are receiving their own voters lately. Kingship is cool, but it doesn't really extend to people who have to get reelected. So we're going to look at that, and it'll be a good time. It'll be good. For now, however, why don't you like and share the stream? Why don't you give the podcast 5 stars? Why don't you become a patron? Become a patron. Join the Frantifa officially, either by becoming a member on YouTube, or my personal preference is going to patreon.com/bituationroom. You can sign up. $5 a month, $10 a month gets you that shout out during the fart song. You get all kinds of perks like 25% off of our sponsors' goods, which I'll mention in a little bit. You get 20% off all merchandise. I am looking into hats right now. Even though my house is, we have so many baseball caps, but these are going to be real cute. So don't even worry about it. You get stickers and t-shirts, and it's adorable. You also get discounts on the American Prospect magazine, 60% off, access to chats and Ask Me Anythings, which we've done. And of course, our Wednesday bonus episodes, which are free to stream, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. But then if you want to listen, because you're more of a I like Franny on the go type person, and I don't want to have to look at my phone, make sure to become a patron. You get a special little RSS feed. It is rainbow colored. It's adorable. And you get access to interviews like the one I did 2 weeks ago with Robin D.G. Kelly, who's also a patron. Not to brag, he did remind me of that. So thank you so much in advance for everyone who supported this very small labor of love. We're also on Substack, frannyfio.substack.com. You can also support us there. We're giving Substack shout outs as well. So not sleeping on that. And before we continue, I wanted to share that Matt Lieb, my husband, and I are going to be in Sacramento, California this is not the prettiest image, but on Sunday, March 16th at the Punchline Comedy Club. We're going to be there. It's going to be super fun. Sunday at 7, don't miss it. But also, we're going to be at Cobb's Comedy in San Francisco on Wednesday, May 8th. Wednesday, May 8th, 7:30, Matt and I co-headlining. It'll be a good time. Come through. Cobb's is massive. So bring all of your, no sitter, get your whole family. Although I do think it's 21 and over. No, it's 18 and over. So get the older kids to come through. No, but truly, it'll be so fun. We haven't done the Bay in a while, so that'll be amazing. May 7th. March 16th is coming right up. Get your tickets, and you're going to hear a lot more from me. Obviously, if you're in the Pasadena area, my monthly show, New World Disorder, is still going strong. March 26th is our next show. James Adomian and Trey Crowder are going to be on it. And my God, that show's going to sell out. That show's going to be so, so, so good. So thank you everyone who's come and supported and been there live. It's been the best. Before I, not before, I think I'm going to do it. I think we're going to go for it. I wanted to bring her in, to bitch about a few things. She's a comedian. She's based in LA. She hosts many podcasts, including 16th Minute of Fame that everyone needs to check out, and the Bechtel Cast. She's also the author of the book Raw Dog, The Naked Truth About Hot Dogs. Please welcome Jamie Loftus.
Hello. Hi, friend. How are you?
Good.
That is something I've been thinking about a lot recently is like introductions and goodbyes of,
Ooh.
How are you doing? And then it does feel like there's always an implied comma in spite of it all.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm reminded of you're doing a show that's sort of meme related, but I'm reminded of the like how your email finds me meme, and it's just a cat who's destroyed like an entire box of tissues, like just like so strung out, and that's how I feel. But yeah, and the goodbyes are interesting to be like, hope you survive.
Best of luck out there. Like brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. Jamie, you just got done. Did you record an album recently?
I recorded my first special. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was really
Comedy
fun.
special. That's awesome. When can people expect that?
That'll be out in the spring. Yeah, I'm gonna
Hell
be
yeah.
get out in like May or May.
May. All right. We'll say May. I'm very excited for that. And I am excited to dig into what I am bitching about. And then I usually let my guests go first, but I'm just gonna throw this on up top.
We're friends, please.
We're friends. Exactly. I don't want to roll out the red carpet too much, but because I do these alone, but I was like, what I'm bitching about feels like it needs Jamie in this. So last week, obviously Elon took a break from, destroying the federal government and was on stage at CPAC. I'm not sure what time of day, but like very hungover guy continues the party till like 10 a.m.
I mean, yeah, like the dark glasses situation is a dead giveaway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of all the things that he said, of all the ridiculous things he said, this one was the one that I missed, and yet is probably my favorite part of his incredibly cringy experience. His talk at it is an experience. His talk at CPAC. Take a look.
So, I mean, we're trying to get good things done, but also have a good time doing it, and and have like a sense of humor, So, I mean, the sort of the left wanted to make comedy illegal, Like you can't make fun of anything. So then it's like comedy sucks. It's like nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like legalize comedy. Yeah.
There's something so bone-chilling about like the vague clinking of his various chains, which really does feel like a time portal back to like the early 2000s of like, are these like white guys really back to wearing large chains?
Yeah,
like it's absurd. Yeah,
no, it is that ham-fisted appropriation of Black culture, which they simultaneously hate.
Yes,
but also no, I can rap. I think I'm funny. That so he had already been given the chainsaw because it's right at his feet, so that moment had passed. But the like legalized comedy, yeah. Now I'm convinced now, and I don't know what you think, but not to be generational hating, but I do think, and given how they voted in this last election, and given the name of Elon's new platform, I mean the platform that he stole and whatever, renamed, I do think this screams Gen X. The Gen X of it all, and how much Gen X was so, and specifically, obviously, cis straight white men with, you know, like loafers and a boat, you know, class privilege, who like no one's laughing at their barbecue joke anymore. Or like couldn't do that to their one colleague and had to get like called into HR that one time and then never forgot about it. Like that they lap this kind of backlash up, right? It's like jokes are canceled and pronouns, and Elon is if nothing else, he's a billionaire, you know, but he really embodies that sort of like the world might have moved on from talking about me and my generation.
Yeah, I mean, it also like even the way he's saying this, it feels very dated. The way that he's giving a lot of mid 2010s talking points with like you can't even tell a joke. Like even Jerry Seinfeld has moved on to aggressive Zionism. Like he's not saying we can't tell jokes on college campuses anymore. Like it's just it's very dated. It's very bizarre, you know. And it's like it really is like if you know he has the same upbringing and attitude of Chet Hanks. Like
yes.
It's like if we put Chet Hanks in charge of things, but he had an even more severe ego problem.
I forgot I forgot whether we uncanceled or recanceled Chet Hanks if he's cool. If he's cool again.
Kind of in the viscous goo of let's see what he does next.
Yeah, totally. No, but obviously, again, what I'm saying is like you have a whole fascist takeover because you think the left wanted to cancel jokes. Meanwhile, Gervais, with all his anti-trans BS, you know, Dave Chappelle had like a 7-part series of transphobia that Netflix banked on time and time again. In no world has any comedian actually gotten canceled other than the actual predators, and even their booking
and even
clubs.
That is they're fine. I mean, and unfortunately, like while Elon is Gen X, like this will come for us all at some point. This will come for everyone's generation. I've noticed that with Gen Z recently, where you know, like with 5-ish years ago, you know, the press around Gen Z was very much like these kids are going to save the world in spite of the fact that we have stacked the odds against them. And now it's like Gen Z has voted in Trump. You know, like there is always going to be these press turnarounds, and it's always going to be the people in the 1% of whichever generation. And like
Sure,
Elon
it's all
is
the
like
right.
the Gen X flavor of that. Like he's
No, it's
the
true.
Gen X like peak example of it.
Right. It's class. It's definitely class. And I'm not meaning to lump, but I guess what I'm saying is like that fragility of like, oh, the world moved on and I can't tell my jokes no more. And here's my question to you. This is why I wanted to bring it up, is because I've been thinking a lot about, we all know, yes, no comedian was ever actually canceled for saying these jokes on stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even Ye, or I mean, Ye's not a comic, but you know what I'm saying? Basically.
He had a Super Bowl commercial. Like, how canceled could you possibly be?
He had a Super Bowl commercial. So, like, that, you know, sent people to buy shirts with swastikas on it. But I think the reason that Elon Musk's billionaire midlife crisis and the sort of haranguing about comedy being and people being canceled and you can't joke about it anymore and yada, 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 yada. And we all know, and as a stand-up, you know, it's like, nah, man, a lot of the misogyny, a lot of the racism, it super flies. It depends on when, where, what your audience is. But also a lot of it just won't do well. It's just a matter of where you're telling your jokes and to whom. But the real thing for me about the internet buy, like the fact that he bought Twitter, really speaks to this idea that you talk about a lot, which is like discourse. He's mad because ultimately Netflix didn't cancel him. Nobody else cancels comics. Like, nobody canceled any problematic or racist or sexist any comic, but the discourse does, you know, can't call it cancel people. And the fact that they can't buy discourse, or that they can't win in the discourse, or that as much as Elon tries to be loved, he's despised and he looks cringier every single appearance, like that I think is what bothers them the most.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know what the answer to that is like it's clear, at least even as like a spectator, that Elon wants more than anything for the world to love him. He can buy power, and ostensibly he has bought power.
Exactly.
But everyone still fucking hates him. So he's never going to have what he wants. And the fear I know that like everyone has is that, this like very, very fragile man is going to lash out at everyone who doesn't like him because he's a fucking loser, because all the money in the world couldn't buy him being liked.
Yes.
And so what do you do with that? What do you do with that person? You
Well,
kind of
and
want to get
Trump is
Luigi on
really
the
similar.
horn.
So you what?
You kind of want to get Luigi on the horn in that situation.
The Luigi signal.
Yeah.
I mean, the Luigi, the Luigi moment has really jumped the shark when, like, the Daily Show, like Jon Stewart, who is he's not the least edgiest person, but even they were like made a Mangione joke last night, like spelling it out.
Really?
Spelled out
That's
Mangione. And we're
fun.
like, no, just kidding.
It's the new on Minecraft. Yeah, like there's
I don't know what that is. Yeah, I don't know.
Grimes followed Luigi Nation. So, it's just something to think about.
Well, and I mean, so that's my thing, is just like, I think the reality is, because the internet isn't, but in some aspects can be an equalizer, and there can be, if you've got if people don't like Madam Web or whatever, they're going to talk about it. Or if people love a
Right.
show or they hate a thing, they're going to talk about it. And the fact that you can't own or squelch out whether or not people think you're funny or smart or anything like that, it's like truly bothers them. And so the idea that, like, let's bring comedy back, like, it's
Like, who
this is all that backlash.
Right. I mean, and it's like there's not even, I don't think, a meaningful movement behind that. It just feels so dated and bizarre to still be kind of pulling out these like late 2010s attempts to justify being awful. It's like even the people who are awful have found new outlets at this
Right.
point. Like even they are not, saying that comedy is being canceled anymore.
Exactly. No, it's true. And Seinfeld's a good example of that. Jamie, what are you bitching about today?
Oh boy. Well, I have my petty thing I'm bitching about is that I know Ariana Grande isn't going to win at the Oscars this week, and that does make me sad as a longtime closet Ariana fan.
Damn.
Yeah, no,
You.
she is my problematic favorite. I really love her.
Wow. Because after Wicked, I was like, let me give Ariana another listen. Nope.
You're so wrong. I love her. I love her.
No, I think it's good. Look, I'm a Taylor Swift I like, but like that's like,
I mean, two objectively evil people.
Sure.
But she's just my flavor of evil. I don't know what it is. But that's my petty thing. My bigger thing, and I actually like, I want to know what you think about this, is just the idea of general media churn right now. I wish that I was able to like talk about it with my peers more, because I've felt in the last, like even like during the election cycle into now, there has felt like an increased churn, not just in the news cycle, but in like the larger forces that force the news cycle. And I feel like this was a conversation that was had sort of during the beginning of the last Trump administration that was pretty cringy and didn't bear out very well, of like, how does one self-care during fascism? And then, like a series of Amazon links or whatever. But I am genuinely like, I am wondering, and I've been talking with my peers about it and just trying to figure out, just the best use of one's energy. And a lot of these conversations I feel like are either not being had or sort of like being dismissed, of like, well, there's no time, you have to, and
you mean like, how do we actually like pace ourselves for the long haul?
Yeah.
Or do you mean like, how do you, like, what are you saying about media consumption? Like, it's just like, it's overwhelming, and the fire hose is, or tell me more.
The fire hose won't become less relentless. And I always sort of chafe to the idea of like, log out for a couple of days. Like that is a privilege in and of itself at this point.
Right.
I guess it's more of like, it seems like an increasingly unanswerable question. Like if you want to respond to this, what are the ways that you can do so that are productive? And it feels like those answers are kind of changing over time, and I wish there were more conversations about that, because I feel kind of conflicted about how to balance my life right
Yeah,
now. And
I feel you.
yeah,
Every night I'm in bed and I'm like, what I really need to do is just start an underground army, and we just have to rise up. Like that's my
right. But it's like, but
And then
we're not,
that's when I'm like,
but if
ugh.
we're not going to do that, like, what are we going to do with our
Well,
energy? And like, you have a kid, and like, just how do you
yeah. Yeah,
balance
well,
your
I'm
life in a
relying on
way?
people. I definitely think first of all, I think you don't have to be all places at all times. I think that's
Right.
number 1.
Right.
And I definitely feel like the metabolizing the rage is important, and I stole the word from Maurice Mitchell of Working Families Party. Like you have to metabolize how angry you are, but in your own way that can be productive. And some people, that I talk to, especially creatives, are like, I'm just not like I can't just fight people all the time. Like that's not who I am. I'm more about
Right.
like making something funny or creating or like doing something productive or like building my own community, doing movie nights or doing like
Right.
whatever it is, having a phone tree, like all the ways that like that's me, versus like someone like me is definitely much more like, oh, I'll fight you. Like I have more like fight you energy, and I
Yeah.
enjoy that. But I
But it's like
also,
but we need the people who are going to fight people. And it's like learning. I don't know. I feel like we have ineffectively addressed it up to this point, and we'll probably continue because it's just going to be an ongoing project. But like, yeah, just figuring out where you belong and how you, because I've noticed and you can sort of choose any starting point, whether we're choosing 2016 as a starting point, or if we're choosing COVID as a starting point, where I know a lot of people who are very, very highly motivated to be involved and who have since burnt out and become disillusioned.
yeah.
And it's not entirely because things weren't paced, but I think it was because like there was so much hope and so much energy that went into, and when it didn't get the results that were quote unquote promised,
Yeah.
it sort of returned to nihilism. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's been the direction of a lot of people. And I don't know how to advise people, because when anyone asks me about that, I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Well, I mean,
also
and
very tired.
I think that's, yeah, I super grapple with it. I guess I'm like, I see the tuning out. I see the tuning out from smart people to be a little disappointing,
Yeah.
but I understand it. And I also feel like, and I've said this since Trump won the election, and folks who listen to the show know that we have to do more than just respond to the news. We have to do more than just like, yes, we need to call Democrats, but it's about building something else and something different, and what does that look like? How is it local? How is it productive? How is it, how are we bracing ourselves for the collapse that these oligarchs hath wrought,
Mhm.
So that could even be as simple as like knowing your neighbors and having, dinner and whatnot. And
Which, yeah, I mean, it's like that's been the only thing that I've been able to recommend to people, where when it comes to the churn of content, I have no real advice to give. Like, I feel equally punished by it. I'm always like, is this doing anything? I don't know. Where I feel I'm actually doing anything is, yeah, like being physically in spaces. And I don't know. It's really challenging
yeah,
where,
and I think
yeah.
that sometimes the stuff that you do is also really important, like, having a project, even though I know it's such a slog, but like if people haven't checked out, any of Jamie's podcasts, you should, there's between movie podcasts, but also sort of a longer lens shows are really important. I love episodic stuff like that, and it's a good place to still keep one foot in what's going on now, but also have like a fun little, diversion, if you will. But it's bro. Well, we were gonna get drinks and we're gonna continue to talk about this. But for now, not a drink, but maybe a gummy, maybe a smokable. I've got to do a quick little plug for the sponsors of this show, Sunset Lake CBD. Thank you so much for getting me to bed every night. I really appreciate it with your good night gummies. That sometimes I'll take half of in the middle of the night when I wake up and I do the thing where I think for like an hour and then I'm like, fuck. But yes, Good Night Gummies, CBD, CBN, good stuff. And also 1 little milligram of THC. They've got chocolate, they've got coffee. If coffee gives you like buzzy jitters, Sunset Lake is a good place to get some coffee because it's got CBD in it. They've got salves. They've got all kinds of stuff. So check them out. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Coupon code FRANTIFA, FRANTIFA at checkout for 20% off your order. And if you're a patron, you get 25% off your order. Check your descriptions for that code. But thank you so much for being sponsors. They're an awesome organization too. They donate to amazing causes, and they're just really, really a great little company out of Vermont. You know what I'm saying? And with that, Jamie, I've got a new little segment, and it is a place to put, again, the churn into one little hurt box, and I call it Orange Man Bad.
Wow. This is the first time I've heard this.
Matt helped me with the music. So this week in Orange Man Bad, Orange Man's big beta Republican Party is convening for a vote on the budget that will cut $880 billion in healthcare for low-income and disabled Americans, Medicaid, in order to extend tax breaks for the rich, adding $4.5 trillion to the national debt. Now, some Republicans are nervously backing away from supporting it as their constituents are angry. Turns out the only thing Doge can't save is their re-election chances. And Orange Man Bad finally has cuts for the Pentagon. Woo! Except they're mostly firing personnel instead of expensive, shitty jets.
No.
They're firing, get this, military lawyers. You know, the ones who make sure we're not doing extra illegal things. They are also firing, Hexit's fired 2 chiefs of staff, coincidentally happen to be the only black and female chiefs of staff in the military. It's crazy that the Pentagon's acting like MSNBC. And also in Orange Man Bad, Orange Man calls Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky a dictator who started the war with Russia, even though they invaded. Anyway, also he refused to call Putin the same when asked point blank. You guys, the P-tape is real. P-tape is real, I contend. The Orange Man's FAA continues to oversee near airline collisions and aviation emergencies. Don't worry, Elon will get his new privatized Starlink air traffic control off the ground in no time. But for now, the flames from every midair collision will just be spelling out DraftKings. That's what's going to happen.
Thank God. Thank God.
I know. Someone's got to remind people. And finally, Orange Man's real father, Elon Musk, sent an email to federal employees on Saturday night asking them to list 5 things they did in the last week or risk dismissal. And then the Office of Management and Budget told staff to just ignore the email. Just kidding.
Yeah. And that's already blown over.
And that's already old. And that's what
old.
Do you do, Jamie? If you get the email, 5 things you did, we're not who we are, but you work at the federal government. Do you send it?
Do I send it?
Do you reply and send the 5 things that you did over the last week?
No. No, I mean, it's just, I do wonder what a lot of government employees are thinking, just in terms of, thinking about longtime government employees, or just thinking about longtime employees in general, like people our parents' age, of how would they reply to an email like this? There's no precedent for it. They don't know what to do. I worry that a lot of people are reporting back because that's what they've been doing for 30, 40 years. And how do you talk someone out of doing that? I used to work at the comptroller's office, and I was working for years just trying to teach them how to use, Google Slides. I don't know.
Dude.
How do they respond to that email? I think Elizabeth's going to have a hard time.
Absolutely. There's been by the way, 1 million replies, but not clear whether those replies were from federal employees or people just trolling the email account, at which point they had to create a new email account now. I think you added 4 somewhere. I forgot. But don't worry, guys. There's more.
We created a new email account over much less than this. I have no doubt.
Nothing to see here. That's been Orange Man Bad. But let's dig into the week. A couple stories I want to hone in on. This is the week where. Okay, so this was the week where Kash Patel, the sycophant who wrote a children's book about Donald Trump called The Plot to Save the King. Featured him as like this like magician and and like Nancy Pelosi's there. Anyway, he's the head of the FBI, maybe, which is cool. He has an enemies list. He regularly goes on white nationalist podcasts, and he says that the media will be gone after either civilly or criminally. And he's appointed another podcast host, or an actual podcast host,
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
An actual, because he just goes on them, but this guy actually has a podcast, which
is really hard to do. Not anyone can just do that.
Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Super hard to have a podcast. 16th minute of fame. Super hard to have a podcast. We're basically government officials. We can oversee, massive federal agencies, but I do feel like we are in a little bit of a monkey's paw situation here by getting what you wish for. Okay, so his name is Dan Bongino, and he's now the deputy FBI director. He's an insane person. He's incredibly violent, and he will most certainly be just like name searching himself on YouTube and getting this video removed right now. Just to give you a sense of how crazy it is to pick someone like Dan, this according to the Washington Post, the Bureau has never had someone from the outside come in as a deputy director. Never, said Ray Batvinas, a retired FBI counterintelligence officer turned author and historian of the Bureau. Quote, I believe Bongino has a steep, possibly insurmountable learning curve, which assumes that he would ever want to learn.
That feels very, very generous to just be like, this guy is almost too dumb to live. Dan Bongino, it does feel like this administration's version of Anthony Scaramucci, where it's like, we've got an Italian-American guy here. He's awful. And what are we going to do about this guy? I mean, I was, sort of digging into the background history of this guy and his very square head.
So square.
Like looking like a prom date. I don't know why like all prom dates in my head have very square heads, but like prom dates that are guys who you went to the prom with but you didn't date, they have very square heads. So he has that energy to me where he's like, oh, he went to prom with someone, but they weren't dating.
It didn't
him,
work. Yeah.
No. And there was never even a chance.
There was a friends rule.
Square.
And like the photographer didn't quite know how to capture it. In that photo. That is so funny. Well, here, I mean, so obviously you're going to be on the list now that we've made fun of his Lego man head.
Really shouldn't have done that. Sorry, Dan.
Should not have done that. But he's like gone after, I mean, this is a little bit about who he is. He's in the last decade, he's been a popular conservative pundit. He had, by the way, a brief stint at Fox News, but they fired him because he was too crazy for them. Just so we know that,
which is honestly, unfortunately, a sign of success.
I know that's exactly right. That's like, oh yeah, he's got super great cred.
Yeah.
He's repeatedly called the FBI agents assigned to conduct the court-authorized search of Mar-a-Lago. Remember, for those documents that he refused to give back, he called for them to be fired. Fire every single person involved in the political targeting of Donald Trump and anyone they don't like, everyone, personnel, or policy. It's a fact. Fire everyone. It's the only way. The evidence of a corrupted FBI is everywhere. And he said multiple times, you think there are legitimate people with character running the FBI? Huh, that's hilarious. That was in 2022. The FBI is entirely corrupted at the management level, and it's filtering down now even to some of the rank and file. And so now he gets to be part of the FBI. Now, I have a lot of critiques of like Congress,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be that. Like, I have a lot of critiques of like the White House. I mean, I know either of us could do better on our worst day than Donald Trump and Elon Musk, but like the idea that you're like, you know what? This is just run so horribly. Like if me like talking about how the FAA or like TSA or something's bad and then suddenly I'm in charge of it, it's just like a real, again, what you wish for, careful what you wish for situation.
I mean, it's like, but I mean, JD Vance, did he not like call Trump a full-on fascist? And that certainly hasn't prevented his pathway to being the vice president of the US. It just like, it increasingly doesn't matter what you say. It just matters how you are perceived and how that can move the administration forward.
And actually the honestly, the only litmus test for being in the federal government at this point is how much you do hate the agency in which you serve.
Right. Totally. Where it's like it doesn't matter the grounds on which you hate it. It doesn't matter if you actually know what you're talking about. It's just, have you expressed antipathy going back at least 400 days to this, centuries long, or not in the case of the FBI, but decades long institution that has all of its own issues. And it also feels weird to have to be like, I don't know, to see people caping for the FBI, of like, no, the respected institution, the FBI, that's never done anything wrong. And
Right,
that's
as a
empowering people
reaction.
to do even worse.
I mean, this is what's funny about like anything happening to the FBI. I'm a little bit like, well, that'll be fun. Don't they kind of deserve it? But then also you're like, oh, he's just gonna go after people who talk mean on internet about him because he's a podcast host. I mean, again, I'm trying to think of like podcast host to like agency pipeline. Like it's like if me talking about like, oh, Cal Fire was run wrong, or like, our response wasn't good enough, and then suddenly like I'm in charge of Cal Fire. I'm like, fuck, okay. I don't know, but I
mean, the FBI is famously incompetent, and it has, empowered a lot of really horrible stuff. I do think it does feel over the top to put, because podcast hosts famously cannot and refuse to keep a secret, which is one of the only things you are supposed to do
at the FBI.
Regardless of how horrific that secret is, you are supposed to keep your mouth shut, and that is not the podcaster way.
No, it is not. This is not the way. Let's hear from the man himself. Here's just a smattering of random things he said. This is him talking about power. He's explaining to his audience how important power is.
The only thing that matters is what? Chat. What matters? Anyone? Power. Power. You can see what I'm mouthing. Power. That is all that matters.
Comfortable, fun. I mean, I'm wondering, chat. Only thing that matters is Cardi B. Everyone say it, Cardi B. We all know this. Like, I'm wondering, like, if you're listeners, the only thing that matters.
It really scares me when a man my father's age says, chat. I'm like, you shouldn't know about the chat. Who told you about the chat? Stay away.
Here he is explaining. As we know, the administration is ignoring justices who say, hey, what you're doing with Doge is illegal, and you need to cease and desist when it comes to accessing Americans' data, when it comes to firing federal workers, when it comes to not fulfilling contracts. That is the job of Congress, not you. And this is what Bongino had to say in response to that.
Donald Trump's the executive. He says we have a problem in the executive branch. Hold on to these payments. The judge can't order these. He's just making it up. So here's my suggestion. If liberals are okay with judges making up constitutional powers, are they okay with Donald Trump fabricating executive powers? How about this? How about Donald Trump in the East Room of the White House sets up a courtroom, like remember the Batman movie? Scarecrow has the courtroom. What was it? The Bane one. It was at the Dark Knight or whatever. That's what we need to do. We need to set up a courtroom. Donald Trump can sit there. He can even wear like the wigs they wear in the UK court system, and he can just start making judicial decisions. He can't do that, bro. The judge can't do it either. What's the difference?
I like that he led with, let's do what Bane did. Let's do that.
This made me, so I haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises, so I was like, I gotta watch this episode now. Because
I think I did, but it left me.
Yeah, it might have been one of those where you're just like forgot about. I'm halfway through it. It's okay. I do. And then I just got into a rabbit hole and started watching James Adomian doing Bane on the Harley Quinn animated series, and it was really funny. So, but yes, him saying, let's do what Bane did. And also, judges have no jurisdiction. No, that's precisely what judges do. That's their whole point. Anywho, that's the FBI deputy.
It's just like, it feels almost like, it's pointless to make fun of him, but his eyes are 95% pupil, and like he's literally wearing a t-shirt saying, I am correct. Like you just did. I don't know.
Real, like, I love their, like, the Temu t-shirts that sort of just like, I'm an auntie, but not an uncle, quack dog. Like, you know, the t-shirts that are like, what does this mean?
Who doesn't have this? It is just, I mean, it is like, it is very funny to me when someone just logs in and they're like, the famously the villain, I like that guy and I work for him. You're like, okay, I guess that wasn't what the point of the movie was, but media literacy is in the mantle of the earth at this point. So whatever.
The mantle of the earth. Let's get into some good news before I let you go, because it's really important to talk about our boy Bernard Sanders going back out on not the campaign trail, but going out and meeting Americans where they're at, and specifically in states that swung to Trump, that went to Biden in 2020, and where there is a slim Republican majority. We know that in the House, there's only a 2-seat majority, and Bernie Sanders is well aware of that. And he's going, this week, he went to Omaha, Nebraska, and he went to Iowa City. And he's calling it the Fighting Oligarchy Tour. So there is no like meet in the middle, kumbaya, hand-holding tour. This is not the understanding, listening tour. This is the Fighting Oligarchy Tour. And here he is being received in Nebraska as he came out in Omaha. 3,400 people, 800 people were turned away, or I believe were in like an overflow room. So that's just very sweet and
Yeah.
and very heartening. Go ahead.
I just it as someone who's been to a number of Bernie events over the years, it makes me feel good, and it also makes me feel bad because it's it's like surely he should have a supporting act up there with him. We're trotting him out like Mick Jagger. It's like we cannot let the man rest because there's just like so few people willing to take a stand like this. I'm very, very glad that there was such a huge turnout for him, because that demonstrates, stuff that no one wants to cover. And now it's actually really hard to access even on social media because it is, pushed down by necessity by the people who own social media platforms. That it's nice to know that everybody is still out there. And at this point, it's like we have to meet in real. I mean, it's come all the way around where, so much of what radicalized me was the internet. And now that option has sort of been taken away ostensibly, and we have to come back together in person. Best of luck to everyone with social anxiety. You do have to leave the house. Hopefully RFK doesn't take your meds away. That's my fear.
Honestly, no, for real. Here's some of what he had to say during the speech.
We can defeat them. I know how much money they have. I know their ownership of the media. I know that they can buy and sell politicians. I know all of that. But this I also know, that when we stand together and not let them divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion, when we stand together, we can defeat them, and we must defeat them.
So, I mean, this is the same kind of like the Bernie stuff that we've heard before, but it is important, especially he's in a very like, yes, it's very white, these places, but also he's not saying like, what we need to do is temper the message on trans.
Right.
We need to stop talking about women and like he's saying, no, we need to stop letting them divide us over these issues.
Yeah. I mean, I think like for me at this point, and I wonder how other people feel about it, is like Bernie is an entry point to connecting with community that can, connect you to doing meaningful things in your area, where like if I go back 10 years in this area, by becoming interested in Bernie, I met all of these people in my community, and 10 years later we're protesting in front of the LA Children's Hospital for trans rights.
Yes.
And it works. And so I totally understand why people have issues with Bernie specifically. He does not have a perfect political record, but I do think he has served as an excellent gateway drug to some harder stuff that is really accomplished quite a bit. And it makes me feel optimistic to see that in areas that I think are being led to believe that there is no hope and there is no community, because that is no hope, is no community. And so I hope people meet at these events and start organizing.
100%. And these are people also who are fed up with the Republicans. And these aren't clips from Omaha or from Iowa City, but I did want to play a little bit of, I played this on Friday, but there was more to the video that I didn't play, and it's so good. So Rich McCormick, who famously was on CNN saying that school lunches should be rescinded from children because they haven't worked for them. He made the mistake of, in this recess, visiting his constituents in Georgia, and this is what they greeted him with.
In a cult, not as a party.
Elon was going to be the main topic tonight, and he's going to continue to be the main topic tonight because we are all freaking pissed off about this. You're going to hear it and feel it.
Tyranny is rising in the White House, and a man has declared himself our king. So I would like to know, rather, the people would like to know what you, congressmen, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
Damn.
When you talk about tyranny, when you talk about presidential power, I remember having the same discussion with Republicans when Biden was elected. The funny thing is, you're sitting here and a lot of you would probably say those January 6s who are yelling just as loud as you, who are upset just like you.
There he goes. I'm sorry. He makes the mistake of calling people January 6ers. Like, you are nothing but January 6ers. They're loud. They're yelling just as loud as you. Remember when they famously sat in a town hall and voiced their opinions with some signs? January 6th, voicing our opinions with signs.
No, I mean, he's full of shit. I just couldn't get my eyes off of his Payless slip-ons that he wore to work. That's
Here's Glenn Grotham, who Glenn also had some wild viral clip, and I'm going to remember it soon. He's from Milwaukee, and here's what his constituents greeted him with.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think he's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
illegal as hell.
Illegal as
underestimated Milwaukee.
Seriously. Okay, well then here's West Bend, Wisconsin. Last clip. Scott Fitzgerald getting reamed and again pulling out the same sort of well, I think it's pretty good, well, you guys settle down now.
How can we be represented by you if you don't have a voice in Congress?
And they didn't like some of Scott Fitzgerald's answers.
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Michael Wittig is concerned with Elon Musk's role in the Trump administration. He held up a sign that read, "Presidents are not kings."
Are you going to subpoena him at some point? Or after you're done with the budget or whatever, are you willing to use your subpoena power to say, Musk, come in here, stand in front of Congress and answer some hard questions?
Congressman Fitzgerald insists Musk's efforts to find waste and fraud are working, and Congress will eventually have budget oversight.
Certainly the discussion in and around DOGE and with the probationary moves that have already been done, they're going to have to be scrutinized at some point.
If there were Trump voters in the room, none spoke up in support of Trump's first month efforts.
I love it. I love it. Just a Wisconsinite with a sign that says Elon crossed out in her winter
the Wisconsin,
coats.
the Wisconsin town halls have turned against their Republican representation. Like this is a big problem.
It's
for
going to be a big
them.
problem. They've got to.
Yeah.
They can afford to lose two voters on this budget. It's not going to go anywhere. It is going to be a shit show. You know, it's not a shit show.
What?
Jamie Loftus's podcast and
incredible
special guy do over. No, Jamie, where can people find you? Follow your work.
You could find me. I'm on Blue Sky under my name, Jamie Loftus. I am still on Instagram. And yeah, you can follow 16th Minute of Fame. Today we released it's a show about main characters of the internet revisiting their big moment online. We released our video with Liam Kyle Sullivan of Kelly's Shoes. If anyone else was online in 2006. I had an interview with him and he is completely lovely. So check that out.
Of course. That much was clear. I'm very excited for that. Oh my God. I hope that's still paying dividends for him. Jamie, thank you so much for being on. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to bring in my next guest. Super excited to have her for the first time in all these years of doing 4 years of doing the Bitchuation Room. She's a writer, activist, one of the country's most influential voices on gender and politics. She's written 8 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Abortion. She writes the newsletter everyone needs to subscribe to right now, Abortion Every Day. Please welcome Jessica Valenti.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
My God, I rely on your reporting and I want to dig right into this moment that we're in.
Sure.
And start with because I think it's really hard to do what you do because I think a lot of people don't want to hear about how awful things are for women, people with uteruses, in reproductive health broadly. But before the election or around the election, we were hearing like a couple stories come out of women, mothers who died because they refused abortion care. Georgia, Texas, I believe. And, then that kind of like, I stopped hearing as many stories about that. Is there an actual like official outlet or someone, a database or someone tracking truly deaths from lack of abortion care? Why or why not? And what have you seen in terms of like the deadliest places to be pregnant?
I wish that someone was doing like a full tracking. I think what's difficult is that so many more people are dying than we actually know about, right? The people who are coming forward are generally people who feel comfortable with the media, comfortable with the idea that their name might get out there. I know pretty much anyone who works in abortion rights has heard at least one, probably more stories of someone who's died, who's not come forward. I get contacted by people, by family members all the time. There's this real fear of attaching their loved one's legacy to something that they know that conservatives are going to, call them and harass them. And so there's a lot of fear there. There are amazing publications like ProPublica, which has been the primary place that we're seeing these stories. There is a website called Abortion in America that's really terrific. And they're sort of collecting the stories of deaths and the stories of real harm that's being caused. And so that's, a great sort of clearinghouse for those stories. But there's not, as far as I know, like a real clearinghouse, an organization that's dedicated to this, and there should be. But again, one of the problems is just really that tracking. And what makes it harder is that Republicans right now are sort of messing with maternal mortality data and maternal mortality committees. Like they're dismantling them. They're putting, anti-abortion activists on them. And so this is going to be a real ongoing problem.
I know we saw that in Georgia, especially after we found out that mother who was pregnant sought an abortion out of state, needed a DNC to get full like tissue out and was denied and died. And then the fact that was being reported by, I guess, the Georgia, maternal mortality board, they were like, okay, well, we're not going to do it anymore. Do you know of other states that have decided to stop tracking maternal mortality?
Yeah. So in Texas, for example, right, one of the worst offenders, first they put a really rabid anti-abortion activist on the board, someone who has a long, like this is her day job. Like she has a long history of being an anti-abortion activist, someone who claims that maternal mortality data is always wrong, someone who claims that abortion bans don't ever kill women, something, like just a real hardcore activist. They put her on the board. And then right around the time actually that Georgia's committee was disbanded, they said, we're going to keep reporting in Texas, but we're not going to report on 2022 and 2023, the first 2 years after Texas implemented its abortion ban. So they're going to report just not on those really pivotal 2 years where you're going to see, a tremendous amount of harm done. And by the time they do report, they're going to have this person that's been on the board who's probably going to skew the statistics. This is like a huge part of their strategy. Strategy is to just like place as many of these people on these boards as they possibly can.
God, I have so many questions for you, Jessica. So I apologize.
That's what I'm here for.
I know. I've talked about it on my own, and I've talked about your reporting on the show before, but I guess I'm always kind of like beating my head against this question of more whistleblowers, heroes, people in hospitals who are willing to risk their jobs to save lives. Like,
yeah,
I'm very stunned at the sort of the lack of physicians and providers and nurses who are actually willing to help women in these obstetric nightmare situations, who are bleeding out, who are in sepsis, or and like are like I guess I'm just like, did you expect that as well, or do you think folks are leaving the profession and creating underground railroad situation? Like, yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think, we're not hearing a lot of the stories of doctors and nurses and healthcare providers who are helping people because they're not going to talk about it, because they know that the consequences for that could be losing their license, getting arrested. And so I do think there is a lot of that happening just on the DL.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'm hearing, so many doctors, nurses, healthcare providers are housed within hospitals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you want to help, you can't, sign up for an examination room without hospital approval. You can't get access to supplies without hospital approval. And so there is this sort of logistical hurdle, I think, to being able to give care. And what's been really, terrible, I talked to a lot of doctors and healthcare providers. There is like a real mental health crisis with them going on, because knowing what you need to do to save someone, to help someone, and being prevented from doing that is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
And what happens is they're often put in this position of, okay, if I help this person and I go to jail, then what does that mean for the rest of my patients, right? If I do this, what then that? So they're sort of like constantly juggling this. They're trying to navigate it. That said, yeah, I do wish that we saw even more providers being open about this, making a fuss about this, just doing it anyway, right? And doing it publicly. I wouldn't be surprised.
I'd rather see the story about someone losing their license than someone losing their life. I mean, but again, I'm neither of those people.
Right. I mean, that's what's hard. It's like we're not in that position. That's something that I've said. I think one of the one example to look at to sort of see like what these states can do when a doctor does come forward. There's an OBGYN called Dr. Caitlin Bernard, who is in Indiana. And you may remember this. She came forward about a 10-year-old girl who was raped and impregnated and had to travel from Ohio to Indiana, and she treated her. And when she talked about it, she didn't give any identifying information, right? Like she just said, like, this person existed. The Indiana Attorney General went after her with the full power of the state, like went after her license. It was like 1.5 years of intimidation, harassment. Like it was horrible. And it's impacted her life in this really severe and awful way. And honestly, that was also a message that they were sending to other doctors across the country, right? Like, if you come forward, if you do this, we are going to absolutely ruin your lives. And so I think it's a really scary time for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to this like out of state assistance. There's so many angles to this, but in terms of like people who are going to states that don't have abortion bans to seek care. I know Colorado's seen this massive surge, but recently you saw Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, refuse to extradite a doctor, speaking of, using the full force of the law, to Louisiana, where because an out-of-state patient saw her or them, I forgot, I don't know who it was. That obviously was massive that Kathy Hochul said that. I assume that she would, but how much can blue states do right now? How can they be a firewall, and how are they limited in what they can do?
Sure. That's a great question. And I think we're seeing a lot of blue states try a lot of innovative stuff to protect providers. In New York, where I live, is a great example. Not only are they refusing to extradite, New York is one of the states that has a shield law that says our law enforcement agencies will not comply with out-of-state law enforcement agencies that are seeking information about doctors and patients. And one law that they just passed that is incredibly, incredibly important is a law that allows abortion providers to keep their names off of prescription labels for abortion medication. So this is actually how Dr. Maggie Carpenter, who's been indicted in Louisiana, how they found her, right? Like you have someone like an abusive ex-boyfriend, which is something that happened in Texas, who goes and looks around his girlfriend's stuff and he finds this prescription bottle and it says the doctor's name, and that's how they know who to target. In New York, they don't have to they can put the practice name, right? So still a target, but not that individual target. And so that is like one incredibly important first step. But I think just not complying, not cooperating is great. We are going to see those cases though head to the Supreme Court, right? Like you're talking about like a lot of interstate criminalization, and it is eventually going to head all the way up there.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of heading all the way up there, I mean, all the laws that you track on abortion every day and that you write about, I think really has this ultimate goal of fetal personhood, right? And that's the criminalizing of abortion as homicide is part of that. You recently wrote about, someone traveling for an abortion being called trafficking a fetus, which is insane. And this is, by the way, the same month that a woman who was actually holding fetuses in her house was released from prison. That's psycho. And there's so many antis who are out there who, like, I'm sure Jan 6 had a bunch of all the 1,500 rioters who were pardoned and all this. But talk about fetal personhood. And why you might not need an abortion ban coming down from the federal government to criminalize abortion all, throughout all 50 states.
Sure. So the fetal personhood stuff is really, really worrisome. The bill that you mentioned, this was something I wrote about yesterday out of Montana, and I'm really concerned about this because it's a bill that no matter what happens in Montana, it impacts all of us, because this was Republicans' first public piece of legislation specifically going after women for trafficking their own fetuses, like specifically trying to restrict and criminalize women's right to travel. And so the law said, if you're in Montana and you leave Montana to go get an abortion that would be illegal in Montana, you're trafficking your own fetus. So like the example I give is, in Montana, you can get abortion up until viability, after which your life has to be at risk. So if you're a person with like a 26-week pregnancy and you find out that your pregnancy has a fatal fetal abnormality, and you understandably do not want to carry a doomed pregnancy to term and you leave the state, that's abortion trafficking. That's a felony just for leaving the state for care. And so this is something that it's like they're using Montana as a testing ground, right? And then the other fetal personhood efforts that we've seen that are really worrisome are happening in multiple states, I think 6 or 7 at last count. And they're called equal protection laws, equal protection bills. And what they say is, that they almost make it sound like they try to make it sound progressive, right? Like equal protection. But what this says is you have to treat an embryo, fetus, fertilized egg in the same way that you would treat a person when it comes to homicide charges. And so the idea is they want to punish women as murderers for having abortions, which is what Republicans said they would never, ever do. We're not interested in punishing women. That's not at all the case. And bit by bit with every bill like this, they are trying to establish that fetal personhood. And like you said, no matter what your state's laws are, there are all sorts of federal things that they can do to make abortion impossible to get. We've been waiting to see what happens with the Comstock Act, which Trump can use to ban the shipping and mailing of not just abortion medication, but any tools used in abortion. And so even if you're in New York, if they stop shipping abortion medication, if that's a crime, you're going to have a real problem, right? It's like something like 65% of people use abortion medication instead of procedural abortions. And so even let's say you're able to get a procedural abortion in New York, all of a sudden you're going to have to wait months, right? Like the 8-week abortion you were going to get turns into an 18-week abortion because the waiting list is so long. And so there's a real danger here of, it's already a major medical crisis, but even getting worse.
Yeah, and RFK Jr. is now head of HHS, head of the FDA, and there could be, Comstock Act, I don't know whether he can rule on that, or if there's
the DOJ. Yeah.
That's the DOJ. Okay, right.
Yep.
Which was initially, it passed as sort of like basically a misogynistic, patriarchal,
yeah, it's 150 years old, passed by a dude who was like obsessed with porn and who was like, we're going to pass this obscenity law that says you can't mail anything obscene. So, porn, birth control, abortion medication, anything that basically conservatives consider obscene would be illegal to mail.
I feel like there's an angle here to go after internet pornography via the Comstock Act and get many people more upset than they are now. But okay, so I just wanted to say, I'm gonna blank on her name. Head of Planned Parenthood recently passed because my brain is so
Cecile
full.
Richards.
Cecile Richards, yes.
Yeah.
It's so sad that we lose amazing people, but Cecile Richards recently passed, and I met her once because she gave me a little award. I'm sure you've gotten a Planned Parenthood award, but it was for some reporting I did in El Salvador, and I talk about this all the time because it was so jarring. I went to a women's prison there, and there were women who were serving like 15, 20-year sentences for homicide because they had abortions, but some of them had miscarriages because of course. And so we sort of tracked like what happens because there's fetal personhood in their constitution. So what that means is, of course, if you have a miscarriage, they immediately suspect that you had an abortion, which then would be homicide. So women were waking up with handcuffs around them, handcuffed to the bed. These are women who had just gone through a miscarriage or, like something that they needed care for. And then some of them were rape victims. Their rapists were not sentenced to that time. So they were there longer than, wild full second class citizenship status for people with uteruses, just wild. And the last thing that was disgusting and disturbing, and this is what it dovetails into a question I want to ask you, is that when there was an unviable birth of a baby that was like just not gonna live, hospitals had to give that unviable life all the fixings and the respirators and try to keep it alive, even though it truly was not going to survive, because they didn't want to be charged with a crime. And again, just to some fucking, nebulous, theoretical piece of paper that said, there's the right of the unborn.
We have those laws here.
Exactly. And this was this was 2016. And really all those bans and all that started around then. But now we know infant mortality in places that have banned abortion is surging. An 11%, 6% higher in states with abortion bans, 11% higher with babies with congenital abnormalities. Explain to people who might not understand how the hell this connects. Why in states with abortion bans are babies dying?
Sure. Part of it is just that states with abortion bans, their doctors are leaving. right? OBGYNs are leaving, maternal fetal medicine specialists are leaving, and that means maternity wards are closing. There are a lot of states where these maternal deserts are just growing and growing and growing. And so in a place like Idaho, for example, someone might have to travel 2 hours if they're pregnant in order to get to a place where they can deliver. And so you have this, you have the maternity care deserts. And then the congenital abnormalities is really, really important. A lot of these states with bans don't allow, as you were saying, don't allow abortions, even in cases where the fetus is completely non-viable. There is no chance of it surviving. And so they are forcing people to carry these doomed pregnancies to term, forcing them to watch their babies die in front of them. It's horrible. And so that's why we're seeing that huge spike there. And then of course, related to that is all of the infants who are going to be in the NICU for a really long time. Just a tremendous amount of harm and suffering that's being caused by people who claim that, they're trying to be pro-life and saving babies and all of this sort of stuff. And when faced with the reality of what these laws do, sort of just cover their eyes.
Yes. No, it's cruelty. And it does feel like cruelty is the point, and patriarchy is the point. And to your earlier, sort of the case that you brought up about a boyfriend finding the doctor's name on a bottle of pills, I did want to ask about how, obviously anti-abortion laws are part of the broader like Christian nationalism, fascism, control of women's bodies that we've seen in this country before, but not with such intentionality. I mean, the intentionality is so, it's, anyway. But I am curious. I've always called it like where it's like where when the permafrost melts and all, like when Roe v. Wade was overturned, when Dobbs' decision came down. Now all these old arcane laws start to come out, like not being able to seek an abortion if you are married, right? Or so. But explain like the intersection of that, like how spousal control, marriage, divorce, how that plays into these anti-abortion laws.
Sure. I mean, I don't think that you can separate. I mean, for them, this has never been about ending abortion, really. It's about trapping women in the domestic sphere and, forcing these sort of traditional gender roles. And so to them, it is all about marriage and control. And it's not a coincidence that this is happening at the same time as they're pushing for an end to no-fault divorce, at the same time that we're seeing the rise of trad wives online, right? To convince young American women that actually it's great that you don't have reproductive rights because you're going to like it better anyway. Like there is this big cultural push that's happening. And like you said, it's not a coincidence that we're seeing sort of like abusive men come out of the woodwork. In fact, anti-abortion groups, their strategy right now in order to enforce these laws, go after doctors, they know that women aren't coming forward to say, hey, I regret my abortion and here's the doctor that helped me, because women, 99% of them don't regret their abortion. They are proactively seeking out abusers. They're going to like men's groups. They're going to all of these different places to proactively seek these men out, men who are eager to bring wrongful death lawsuits, to try to punish and harass their exes. That is who they are depending on bring these sorts of cases. And so there is this like real connection to abuse, power, control, patriarchy.
That is terrifying. Yeah, no, I mean, it's like the Texas law, right? The vigilantism of being the one to rat out, anyone who aids or abets an abortion. And what do you get? $10,000? Is that there's like
$10,000? Yeah. Though a lot of people don't even need the money. Honestly, they do. I mean, there are so many people, like I wrote a piece once about snitch culture. Like they are depending on this idea that people really love to rat each other out. They love to feel like they're snitching on someone. It's so disgusting. It's this intentional breaking down of communities, this intentional breaking down of community support.
Yeah.
It's just completely wild.
I really want to see your dog because you can
see my dog. I'm sorry, Bruno, come here.
Come here.
He's got like a little bit of zoomy situation.
I can hear the zoomies, and I'm like, oh my god, yes, thank you. If you're listening, there's an adorable Australian. Is it
Yeah, he's a mini Aussie.
Mini Aussie. Oh my God, so cute.
He is usually pretty good, but this afternoon.
Dude, okay, that was just worth it. I was like, this better be a good dog.
It's a good dog. It's a good dog.
A really good dog. Okay, lastly, I really want to ask you about, Republicans are threatening to cut $880 million from Medicaid right now in their budget bill. At the same time that they are super on board with these anti-abortion laws, 41% of all births covered under Medicaid.
Yeah.
Pregnant women are covered under Medicaid. It is one of it is something that enables people to even have a safe and healthy pregnancy when they do fall pregnant. It does feel like that. When you do become pregnant, like, just can you talk about what it would mean for Medicaid to be gouged, or and it's something like, what is it? I wrote it down. Over 185% of the federal poverty line. So that's how much Medicaid will cover. So people who aren't necessarily super low income can still get on Medicaid when they're pregnant.
Right. I mean, listen, those maternal mortality numbers that are already going up will skyrocket. And the other issue is that, they are going after Planned Parenthood and Medicaid's patients' ability to choose Planned Parenthood in order to get contraception, in order to get pap smears, right? And for a lot of these people, Planned Parenthood is the only place that they have in their community. And so you're essentially cutting off people's ability to get any sort of healthcare, reproductive or otherwise. And so I hate to keep saying it's going to be bad and it's going to be worse, but it really, really is. And I don't think that people fully understand. I think they're starting to. There is going to be a moment soon where every single person in this country has been touched by an abortion ban, has been harmed by an abortion ban, whether it's because you couldn't get the care you needed when you were miscarrying, or because you have to wait 6 months in order to get a pap smear, or because someone in your community died, right? Like, that is how fast this is happening. And I just hope that people really start to, take some action if they're not already.
Well, yeah. I mean, what do you suggest people do other than obviously getting involved, and I think stepping to some of these psychos. But like, what do you think people should do? I mean, honestly, even on a movement level, what do you think people need to do? I mean, I've got a lot of axes to grind with the modern, abortion rights movement, and I feel like how safe they've played it, leaving us in this situation. But yeah, I mean, like, interpersonally, or like, is it getting Plan C pills? Is it, what does it look like?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think one, you mentioned abortion medication. Order abortion medication right now, advanced provision. You do not need to be pregnant in order to get abortion medication. You can order it just to have on hand in your medicine cabinet, not just for you, but for someone who who might need it down the line. The shelf life is multiple years. You can get it on a sliding scale. I highly recommend anyone with the ability to get pregnant get this medication and have it on hand. Interpersonally, talk about it all the time. That's what I say. Like, we're in a moment where the news is insane. The news cycle keeps moving. I have seen, because I cover this every day, I've seen the news coverage drop off a tremendous amount. The coverage is not what it used to be. And I'm really worried that people will not be paying attention unless it's personally impacting them. And so it's really incredibly important that we just continually talk about this. And then the last thing is, the vast majority of Americans want abortion to be legal. This is not an issue of having to change people's hearts and minds. This is an issue of a small group of extremist legislators imposing their will on the majority of us. And so you can help by working on voter intimidation and suppression, by working on gerrymandering, by working to, secure democracy in general, right? Like, if we had a secure democracy, things would be a lot better with abortion rights.
Right. This is not a siloed issue. This is not separate from the other the other fights that we are waging for our democracy. Abortion Every Day is the Substack. It's jessica.substack.com, which I didn't know was just your name. But it's been really an awesome resource, and I read it, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for taking the time and coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody, go subscribe. Jessica's such a real one. I'm really, really happy we were able to make it work. And thank you all for being here. I wanted to address one commenter because, man, this is something I kind of wanted to sound off about, but didn't have the time. Alias Weird Knut. That is the weirdest name. I just read that MSNBC fired all the non-white moderators. WTF. Yeah. So, recently MSNBC decided to let go of Joyanne Reid. They also, I think, fully let go of Katie Fang. I'm not sure if she's going to get another show. They canceled my boy Ayman Mohadin's show, who's I had been on and actually was scheduled to go on this weekend. So I guess he's going to find a new slot. It looks like also Jonathan Capehart lost his weekend show, so it's unclear. Capehart and Mohadin will be one of the multiple hosts of separate editions of The Weekend. So here's what's happening, because it's not that they're just firing the people of color, because you've got Michael Steele, former Republican. You've got Alicia Menendez, daughter of disgraced Senator Bob Menendez, who somehow still has a job. You've got Simone Sanders, who is the ultimate whatever you want her to be, she'll be. So long as the paycheck's there. I'm sorry, but like, come on now. And you've got obviously Morning Joe's not going anywhere. That's still on MSNBC. But what I'm saying is, like, what they're doing, Joyanne Reid was fully fired, but what they're doing with other hosts, it's not that they're only getting rid of like the black and brown hosts, because they've got other black and brown hosts. They are making sure that they don't have a show, whether it's the show in their name, whether it's something people rely on, Joyanne Reid's show. Like, and I understand they might have had their own reasons. Okay, we want to, the ratings aren't there for us. That's fine. I'm not saying the ratings were like crushing it, but it is important to understand that, like, they just want more malleable faces. They want people to have, like, okay, you're going to host the news show called The Weekend, right? Like, they want newer people. They want younger people. They want people with less perspective. They want people with less trust. And so Joyanne Reid was like, honestly, I really didn't like a lot of her coverage in 2016 around Bernie Clinton. I felt like she, I think she was one of the people who was like, oh, was Bernie's, hand gestures, were those sexist? I didn't appreciate that. But in terms of racial justice, in terms of Palestine, she was solid, and she kept on moving to the left, and you could tell she was. So I absolutely think it's a crying shame that they let her go. And again, they're letting anybody go who would have any power, which is ironic, because the very thing that gets you ratings is when people like the personality of the person on the show. It's not when they're just interchangeable. But again, if you are corporate media and you don't really care about your audience, you just care about making, you're just kind of, you're really the ad break for the pharmaceutical, like wall-to-wall pharmaceutical ads and insurance ads, then you can see why it makes sense economically. Anyway, y'all, it's been quite a good show. I appreciate all you for being here. Thank you, Gus, saying keep up the fight. Thank you. Nurse Missy G says, Franny and Jessica have me in tears. Providers exist. They just can't speak. Our mental health is not good, but we exist. Thank you, Nurse Missy G, for saying that. Terrence Trumbo, OMFG, when they cut Medicaid, some shit's going to go down. I tend to think Trump wants an excuse to declare martial law. I mean, right? He's just waiting. Him, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, they're like, ooh, they're very excited. And I think that's the other thing is, like, part of obeying in advance is not protesting in advance. And so it's important to realize, like, we're not in Duterte's Philippines. Like, we're not living under martial law. We're not in Putin's Russia. People protest with far fewer rights and access than we do. And so we really do need to step up. Robert, thanks for your super chat. In 1932, you were a German policeman. In 1933, you were a Nazi policeman. The same thing is happening here. It's a really good point. Thank you. Also, another Robert, history happens to us. We don't happen to history. Tinkle Tits McGee, the right tried to cancel Kathy Griffin. Yeah, I remember that. In fact, canceling comes from right-wing culture. When canceling started when Stephen Colbert spoke out against Trump, and the entire right wing lost their minds and were like, cancel Colbert, if you remember that. THMC, when will Democratic leadership find their obstructionist passbook after the tax cuts are passed or 4 months out from the midterms? I mean, right? It's like we only hear about, like, for example, abortion when they want our vote. It's like, no, what are you doing right now for abortion rights? That's what we want. We want to hear your plan. The instructor, Katie Fang, always called Trump a convicted felon. Every time she does her show, she never called him president. Maybe that's why they fired her. Yeah. And Jules T reminding us that, yes, Zateo, Tuesday, Thursdays, America Unhinged with me and Wajahat Ali. It will be live tonight as well as on Thursday. And let's get into the fart song and thank all of these folks who became members, folks over on Twitch, and the patrons at $10 or more. It is not lost on me how wonderful and how much you support this show. Dunes Duo, thank you. David Elkins, Jeff Naring, Sarah Anderson, Rob Sullivan, thank you so much, Rob. Thank you, Sean Rowan, for upping your pledge, and Zane Revi, that's really, really generous of you. Shout out to the Substack members, Captain Logos, okay. Our small but mighty Substack growing, frannyfio.substack.com. Bonzilla the Inevitable subscribed over on Twitch, and Holy Beer Dragon gave out 5 community subs. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Charm Chaos also subscribed with Prime. Thank you so much. Raven Light also subscribed. Chum Socket, which is a weird name, thank you for subscribing with Prime. And thank you, Benjamin Morrill, for giving out a sub over on YouTube. Thank you, Tanya Dodger, for giving out 5 subs. That's so kind of you. Moondragon following it up with a sub. Gus coming in, just crushing it. Gobble these subs up, 10 subs over on YouTube. That is so nice of you. You get access to the bonus episodes. You can watch them all back. They go back for what? What are we, a year and a half into our 2 years of our bonus episodes, Paige? And Dystopia 3030, thank you so much also for becoming a member. You guys are great. Again, remember my preference is that you become a patron because also that gets you the best perks over there. I always take your suggestions for guests to have on, and there's some chats in there, and there's different perks. So thank you. And thank you to Paige Omek, to Brent Godin, who is crushing it on the editing portion, and of course the podcast editor, Andy Vasoyan. We're streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And until tomorrow, remember to fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, free Palestine, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Bye.